this episode, we are full on spoilers for both the novel and the film.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rebecca.
And I'm Jen.
And I'm the Geeky Hippie. Welcome back to WoT the Adaptation. We're that YouTube show that, reviews adaptations from one form to another. Tonight, we're reviewing episode 107 of The Rings of Power from Amazon Prime. It's titled The Eye, written by Jason Cahill and directed by Charlotte Brandstrom. It aired on October 7th of this past week. Now, what did everybody think of this episode?
Go ahead, Jen.
No, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I think I liked it more than most people seem to, or I don't know. Maybe people are a little mixed on it, but I think I'm more on the side of like I like this episode.
Okay.
Because of the finale, I did not record with you all. Dr. Chase was on, but
right.
I was like, how can they have 2 more episodes after the previous one? But this one actually did a very good job of continuing the story to whatever the resolution is going to be next week. I'm really looking forward to that. So it was good in the sense that it didn't feel so deflated after the founding of Udun and Mordor and that sort of thing, but it also left some open-ended questions to where I am interested to see how they're going to wrap this up. I don't know what they're going to do with a couple of stories, so it did the job very well as far as that continuing the story goes.
Yeah, I don't know what they're going to do with some things either, so it's a big mystery.
I like that
I mostly enjoyed it, but this episode just slammed home the fact that this is a fantasy world and it's magical, because nobody would be alive there in that village when that pyroclastic flow hit them. And even if they did survive, they would probably not have any hair. They would be burned like crazy. It just they got the scenery right with the devastation it caused, but not with what it would have done to humans or even an elf. So that, I read a lot of sci-fi and fantasy. I'm used to trying to ignore stuff like that, but this one was just, it was the foundation of the episode, and it was just like I thought it was kind of ridiculous.
I kind of blame the end of episode 6 for that more than I do this episode. It's just, the end of episode 6, they're showing everyone like super close to the explosion. And, if they had shown that a little bit differently, a little less dramatically, then, maybe it wouldn't, you wouldn't have as much detail to go on at the beginning of this to say, because by the time we come in here again, things have calmed down. Right.
But
it's what we saw last week. But I'm on things like that. I'm gonna suspend disbelief because I'm
having to,
and it doesn't.
So what
it's not a story problem. It's just it's a practicality thing. But
well, they wrote themselves into that. But even if they survived the heat of that pyroclastic flow, they'd be coughing blood because those ash particles would have gotten into their lungs, and that's like microscopic glass. It just shreds your lungs to bits. So let's get past the gruesome stuff.
Let's move past it. Oh no, there's more. But anyway, move past that gruesome stuff. Anyway. All right. So let's talk about, to the extent that we can, any changes from the source material that stuck out to you and how that may have affected your appreciation for the episode.
No, I think they did a pretty good job of like taking a small gap and everything that Tolkien wrote and things that they could have the ability to write, because of legal issues and that sort of thing. So like, how can we describe this part of the story that is largely untouched? So I think that's what they were aiming for. So it's nicely diverted away from all of the other writings. So I think that's the point, for several different reasons, legal and otherwise. So I don't think there's much to really go for as far as that goes.
Okay, so there were 2 things that I wanted to bring up.
Okay.
One I like and one I don't know, because it depends on still where they're going with this. So the one that I like is the way that Galadriel brought up Celeborn in this episode. So this isn't, again, there's a lot of history there that like isn't really filled in, so who knows. But she mentions that Celeborn went off to war before her, so they're already married, have presumably been married for quite a long time, and he went off to war before her, and that she never has not at this point not seen him again, and seems to believe him dead. Now, one thing I just want to make sure people like don't freak out is that doesn't mean he's dead, right? If she believes he's dead, I do not believe the show means that he is dead, right, at all. I think he's going to appear in next season probably, or at some point, and she'll be reunited with him. So I actually like how they have put that in there. I think that I was sort of wondering this whole time, like how, assuming they're going to keep Celeborn in as a character, how is she going to meet him? How is he going to become, this great love of hers, or whatever is going to happen? And it wasn't really fitting well in my head with where Galadriel is at so far. But to have her somehow reunite with someone that she loved in a much more hopeful phase of her life, when she was probably a different person, really, and how she would then adjust to being with him again, that could be interesting. So that's what I'm anticipating based on that little snippet that we got in there, that we'll get to see that. So I think that's interesting. I like that they mentioned that. And, I like
the little touch they added and how Celeborn and Galadriel met. Yeah. They stole Beren and Luthien's introduction of her dancing in a glade and him finding her that way. And I'm just like, sneaky, stealing like, idea. It works, but
be a very classic elven meet cute. It's kind of like meeting in a bar. If you're an elf, you meet your paramour dancing in a glade of flowers, as opposed to so it's just normal, apparently.
That's just Middle Earth.
Yeah. So I like
and
that.
Arda.
Yeah. And then the other piece, this is going back to I guess 2 episodes ago, where we have the mithril, the plot line coming back in. So in this case, we've seen that mithril erases the corruption that's on this leaf brought from Linden. And so that is super interesting, because before I would have said, well, there may be nothing to this theory that mithril would be helpful for all we know. Right. And now we have to at least say, well, there's something to it. But then the question is what? So I'm still in the camp that there has been some kind of deception for the elves and what they believe, and what they're being pushed to do. And
Philip was pretty convincing on that with him and AP's idea there.
So I still think that there must be manipulation, deception that's affecting them, but yet this mithril did do something. So then that makes me wonder, is this specific corruption that's on this tree, is that something that was created specifically, so that anyone who was testing it could, if they had mithril and they had this corruption, it would do something, and that would further convince them. It's a little bit makes it more complicated, though. Like, for someone to, it's one thing to just like feed stories and information that's manipulative. It's another thing to actually create some kind of corruption on a tree that is affected by mithril, so that you could manipulate them that way. So it's way more complicated.
What that reminds me of? That reminds me of Pedro Nile.
Yeah.
He one of the early scenes in the Wheel of Time with him, he's thinking about, how do you take control of a town? You release a lion into the village, and then you go in and take down the lion, and then tell them to do this with the lion, and then tell them this, and they start doing what you tell. But it's it's a rope-a-dope.
Save them from a problem that you created. So yes, it could be like that. Only it just becomes a lot more complicated for Sauron or whoever to create this specific corruption that responds to mithril, and then like feed them information about mithril in hopes that they do something about that. So I don't know. It's more complicated. I mean, the other alternative is that the mithril thing is true, correct, which would be a bigger change.
I think it might be correct, but not so much in the way they're thinking.
Maybe. Yeah, right. It could be in some different way. And I've seen people discuss the idea that using mithril to make the elven rings, the 3 elven rings, which then afford them some, independence from Sauron, some ability to resist him. Yeah, so I mean, it could very well be that it's true. But I guess my question is the big question I have is there manipulation, for the elves believing this or not? And I still think there is. This just complicates that, potentially makes it a little bit trickier to explain.
I almost suspect there's somebody manipulating Durin the Third, King Durin.
You think so?
Now, whether it's
really?
a big person or just one of the other dwarf lords, but I don't know. He seems to be getting bad counsel. Somebody is making him super paranoid and suspicious and just becoming xenophobic.
Wrong, I mean, he's not really wrong though. He's just like worried about like digging down, too deep or whatever. And apparently he's right. So I don't know if he really is getting bad counsel.
Well, Durin did kind of, in the long run, Durin the Third is right. Because we saw him at the end of the episode, towards the end of the episode. We know Durin's bane's coming eventually.
I don't mean that he's right. I mean that he has a point, right?
Okay.
Because even if you knew that a Balrog would be disturbed by doing this, you could still make an argument if you truly believed that the entire elven race somehow depended on this thing. You could still make a case for, well, okay, we got one Balrog we have to deal with versus, having no elves at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So you could still, make a good argument to say we should do this anyway. Although you should probably do it with some sort of a plan and not just during the fourth, like just crack it away for, whatever he's doing.
He did hit the mother load though.
He did. So anyway, I don't know. I don't get the sense that Durin the Third is getting bad counsel, or it's certainly not the kind of counsel that you would think of like being like something Sauron would want.
I just think they're leaning into a dwarven stereotype of I'm just going to be super xenophobic. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to shut off the borders, never trust an elf, that sort of thing. My thing that I was thinking before this, I was like, okay, where was the animosity towards the elves? Because he already come in, oh, don't trust the elves, blah, blah, blah. This is before like all of the trials and tribulations that happen afterwards. So I'm like, okay, we're starting out xenophobic, really bad toward elves in particular, particularly elves. I was like, wait a minute, why don't trust an elf? Why would we trust an elf? Like very, very emphasis on no elf, no. And I'm like, okay, where does that come from? That's more when I'm watching it. That's what I'm thinking of. Not even the mithril debate. I'm going, why so the xenophobic towards them specifically right now? That to me doesn't make any sense.
No, you're right. It's a good question, and it's something the show hasn't really answered in general, right? Like everyone hates the elves, right? Númenóreans hate the elves. Humans, but they always have a reason. Dwarves hate elves.
I know they're not right. They're not right, but in their brain of thinking, they think they were abandoned by the elves, and now they got to turn against them or something. There's at least a history with an elf there. I don't see where there would be. I don't see where there would be a history of that with dwarves.
My point isn't so much that there isn't like a potential reason in the history. It's what the show has told us or explained to us is not very extensive on any of that. So why does everyone hate the elves? It's not been clear at any real point here. The only group that I understand are the human Southlanders who have been watched over by elves who were suspicious of them and like sort of, that I understand. Just from a human nature standpoint.
If you lived in a world where the people in that forest would live forever and they basically have superpowers, we see elves doing all kinds of superpower type shit all the time, you're gonna develop some sort of jealousy at the least culturally, maybe not just in individuals, but the humans living nearby somebody who's like that. I can understand how that would develop into animosity. I'm not condoning it by any means, but it's pretty apparent, that why, they're bitter. there's a bitterness at not living, not having the chance to live forever.
Yeah,
the
I
doom
mean, I
of
guess
man.
that's sort of maybe suggested for all of them, right? That, oh, we just hate the elves because they live forever. And
I think
okay,
that's
I mean,
I think that's
guess
part of it.
Maybe that's it.
They
but
are
I think,
haughty too, though.
well, some of
They
them
are very haughty.
Yeah, some of them are. No, I wouldn't.
There's a lot of haughtiness to the elves. There's some that aren't.
Not Elrond, not
It's like-
Arondir.
I thought originally, Glenn, you said there's a lot of hotties in the elves.
Ooh,
I'm like,
No, well,
yeah.
some of the elven
but is that why
some of
you're
the elven
jealous?
women,
Okay.
some of the elven women are damn good looking, and I'll admit Arondir's pretty.
Yeah, I was
That's
like,
a prettier
oh, yeah,
elf
hotties,
than
okay.
Legolas. He's more
Yeah,
badass
that's
than
what you meant.
Legolas. But no, I can kind of understand why humans. And see, one thing, we haven't seen human and dwarf interaction yet.
No,
We
that
don't
would be
know
interesting.
how King Durin III feels towards humans. He might be just as xenophobic towards mankind as he is to elves.
Yeah, they may just not trust anybody really, which I guess that's kind of.
They are secretive. They always, even in the books, they were always kind of secretive. I mean, they've got their own secret language, their secret names that was being talked about.
Yeah, actually, I did want to add on to what Jenn had said, because the other thing that Durin the Third did was he basically lost it specifically when his son told him that Elrond was a brother to him. That was the thing for him when he lost it.
It was
that is
bringing up his mother. It was mentioning his mother is what really pissed Durin the Third off.
That's what he said, but I'm not sure I'm buying it, because I mean, just mentioning the mother, it was the context he mentioned the mother, right? It was specifically in the context of, this elf is my brother. And he mentioned the mother. I thought that was an excuse. I didn't really think it was about mentioning the mother. I think it was about the context, and the context being that an elf is his brother. And I think that really pissed him off.
Maybe like the way that he said it, the words that he used were fired in my own mother's womb. So maybe the context of having an elf inside of his ex-wife's womb,
dead wife,
dead wife rather, it would make him mad. It was the whole elf literally inside the body of a dwarf.
It was very very intimate, and and I'm just saying there was definitely some anti-elf as part of that freak out that he had, because that was, I mean, things got heated in that scene. But I think we're getting ahead of ourselves. So, and is there anything else anyone wanted to talk about in regards to any of the changes that we've brought up?
No, I think we're clear on that one.
All right. So let's talk about anything visually, world building, scenery, props, costumes, music, CGI.
Goodness. There was that long shot of Orodruin in the distance, this spewing all the cloud. That shot was just, I thought that shot was intense. I mean, Mordor, Southlands in flame, Mount Doom in the distance, sending out dark clouds. It's covering all the sky. It was just that was a really cool shot. Everything's still, it's probably the most beautiful, visually appealing TV show on right now, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Although I got to give House of Dragons credit with those dragons. House of the Dragon. Those dragons dragons were good.
There's no Witcher dragon. I know how you feel about the Witcher dragon. So
yeah. Oh my. And I still think one of my favorite pieces of prop is that armor, that breastplate that the Sylvan Elves had there that Arondir's always wearing. That with it's almost, it reminds me of drawings I've seen of the Green Man from Celtic mythology. It reminds me of images and drawings I've seen of him. I just think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is cool. I like that.
It was very simple, but for some reason, the one shot of it's kind of a sweep panning shot, and then you have I forget his name. The bad elf starts with an A. Why is the name
Adar.
escaping? Adar. You have him sitting on the log, and he's like thinking to himself. They're like, "This is your land," and he's like, "No, this land is no more." What I? And then you had in flame the lettered writing of the Southlands, and it just changes in the sweeping shot to Mordor, and it was very simple. It's very on the nose. It's very like. Just in case for those of you who for some reason may not be understanding what this is Mordor. It was very like we're gonna put that directly on you. But I like that for some reason because you know why? It was just they did the whole sweeping shot and say this is the infancy, this is the beginning of a new place on the map. Like this is I really liked that. I don't know why. It was very on the nose, but I like it.
It's very on the nose. I think they get away with it because of the way they've been using the map all season. So it kind of fit in with that. And I think if it had come out of nowhere, I would have been like, oh, that's weird. Like, why didn't you just have him say Mordor? Like, just say it, right? But because they've been using the map, I'm okay. You know,
I love them using the maps. I think more shows. Cool. I think all fantasy shows and science fiction shows that have like a planet that nobody's familiar with, shows like that should use maps. That's why they put maps in the books. And
it's I like maps in shows more than I like maps in books because it's just a little bit more, you can do more with it visually. So I like it. Yeah. All right. I don't really have too much to add in terms of specifics, but I will just say that like okay, so we poked fun a little bit about like the realisticness of everybody surviving this huge blast and so on. But I do like the visuals of how they made everything look afterwards. And just the air and the color of everything changing. I liked it. Ash covering everything. That was well done. Like it.
And it's realistic too. For the after effects are pretty much realistic. Maybe a little bit more wooden structure still standing, than would normally be, but that's questionable. But like I said earlier, when I was complaining about them surviving the pyroclastic flow, everything but the humans was handled the way it should have been with that having gone through.
Have to, and the other thing that they definitely was like, are not shying back on in the show are, showing some of the more like gruesome, like physical injuries and things like that. So that sort of injury tent that Theo is walking through, and oh man, there was some gruesome, grotesque stuff going on there. So they're not shying away from that, which I feel is a little different for Lord of the Rings. I don't feel like what we've seen before, it really lingers as much on that visceral, side of things.
Two Towers, you get a little bit of it. When Merry and Pippin are with the orcs.
I'm not saying it's not there. I just think this is a step up in that regard.
Oh yeah. So. They figure they can get away with it. Times have changed. We do tolerate more gore than we used to.
Yeah, we do.
But I liked all the, as usual, the production value is, it's top notch. What's next, boss?
Dialogue. How did we feel about any dialogue in this episode? Any standouts for you?
Durin and his dad, the Durins. Durin v. Durin. Bing, bing, bing. All the way. That was like dialogue heavy. That's it. Just
Tarantino was like this, watching that scene. It's like, this is good.
It was a very fiery scene. It was a really good scene.
Yeah. That's aces right there. I don't think
it's one of my favorite scenes of the episode.
Yeah, it's up there for me too. That was a really good one.
My general answer spoiler for later in this episode, my general answer for favorite scene of the episode, anything Durin's in.
Yes. Oh my god, he's so good. Yeah.
This was Durin's episode, in my opinion, despite everything going on in the Southlands taking up more of the episode.
And even took away from Nori. We haven't seen Nori in a while, and it was still Durin's episode. Usually when Nori takes my interest, but it was all Durin. It was the all Durin show all day long for me.
Yeah. when he's talking to his father, and he's talking about how, and so I like the story his father was telling him about, when he was a baby, and him sort of realizing that he was going to survive, and that his son was going to move mountains, and then him responding that like his father's like trying to take away any ideas that he has that don't originate with him, that it's just that it's really an epic struggle between these two, this father and son. And everything about it was,
it's some good
amazing.
storytelling. It's some really good storytelling. And I don't understand why people are throwing fits about the show still.
I get it, but anyway.
I've stayed away from that. I don't see it.
Smart.
It
smart,
does not exist.
It's
one of the things I like about the dialogue is the writers have had a habit of using archaic words and archaic phrasing. Just we know what they mean in context. In this show, the dialogue does, harken back to an older use of the English language in a lot of points.
Especially among the elves, I think it's noteworthy that just the way they phrase things is a little bit different.
Especially
but I will
the
say,
elves.
For the dialogue in that regard in this episode, Galadriel had some really good lines, and they were phrased in that similar kind of way that's just a little bit different than, certainly not sounding like the way modern humans would speak. But I don't think anything of it sounded stiff or unnatural in this episode. So I think that they were maybe improving in that regard. One example was like, she's talking to Theo, and she's saying, I forget the exact words, but what we cannot know hollows the mind. Don't fill it with guesswork.
Yeah.
And then that wasn't the exact phrasing, but close to that. And things like that. She had a number of those in this episode.
She had some good lines. What's this, Boss Man?
I like the Queen Regent's lines about "Do not pity me, elf." I like actually her line a little bit too. She only had a couple, but when she delivered, they were a punch. Especially
Amanda Waller's badass.
Especially when you realize that she was blind, she's just like, keep walking. And I'm like, what are you gonna do? Okay, she's blind. You get like, now it sucks, but like, you have to. What else? Like, you have to leave. You just have to keep walking forward. And the way that she carried that, the way her stature was, the way she delivered them,
she's still queen.
In previous episodes, I hadn't said this before when we were talking about it, but sometimes when she was with Galadriel, or sometimes when she was just talking, she was just kind of like doing this and looking a little bit stilted. And some of her lines, with respect, I liked her as an actress, and she was beautiful, she was amazing. But this episode, I don't know if it's because of the band across her eyes or because she had to carry herself differently, but when she was saying her lines, I found myself warming to her more. And even I was like, she sounded even more regal. And I guess it's a trope where you have to be blind to actually really see. I know that's done in fantasy quite a bit with different heroines and powerful figures and that sort of thing. It's been done. But if they're trying to have that, like saying that I'm, ready to accept things and see better now that I'm blind, I like how they did that. I really did.
Yeah, it's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. And because you're right that it is a trope. It's actually probably not a great trope, I'm guessing.
No.
For someone who actually is blind, probably not loving that.
No.
Having hung out in a Zoom chat with someone who is blind and listening to what they had to say.
It's a trope.
But I'm going to go in a slightly different direction with why I think Miriella was different in this episode. And because I don't think it was limited to just after she lost her sight. I think that she may be the kind of queen who thrives more in this sort of environment and situation, and that maybe she's not someone who's really built for the kinds of like political stuff that's going on back in Númenor, but rather someone who inspires her people during wartime, maybe more of her wheelhouse.
I mean, she didn't jump into combat. She didn't lead the combat from the front lines, but in the aftermath, she jumped right in. I mean,
Right.
you don't hear of queen, you never see a queen in fiction helping lift timber off of somebody. That's just not a queen thing. And here she is.
And that's exactly why I say it, because she was doing all of that at the very beginning of the episode. She was leading her people. She was pulling people out. She was directing everyone right in the thick of it. And she was being very queen-like in that moment. And that was before her vision was affected. There's a moment when you can tell when she loses it. And I didn't notice it the first time through, but I did the second time. And so I'm gonna give them a little credit on that iffy trope and just say that I think a lot of it may be that she's more of a wartime queen, perhaps.
So let's rewind a little bit back to the previous question, or one of the previous questions about CGI creatures and all that stuff. I'm gonna throw special effects makeup and just hair and makeup in there in general too. One quibble that I didn't think of until we were talking tonight. Muriel should have had damage to her face, to her eyes. Everybody survives pyroclastic flow. She gets a bunch of sparks in her face, no physical damage is visible, and she loses her sight. There should have been something. They should have done some sort of makeup. I mean, not to the extent what they did with Nynaeve at the end of Wheel of Time season 8. Nothing like that.
They took that too far. Anyway.
But, her face should have been reddened and raw,
We do not mention Nynaeve at the end of season 8.
Cloudy eyes, maybe.
You went too far.
Well, see, it's for me, it depends on what they're doing with this loss of eyesight. Is it going to be temporary? Is it going to be permanent? Like, what is exactly the cause of it? I mean, my guess is they don't want us to think about that too much. But if it's not a permanent loss of sight, maybe there's a little bit more leeway there. But we'll see. But I think you're probably right. They could have at least done some damage around her eyes. I don't know that I would have changed the eyes themselves. I mean, for one thing, they clearly wanted it to be a little bit of a reveal moment that had happened. So if they made it like too crazy, then they wouldn't have done that. But
I am going to predict that Farazan is going to use Muriel's blindness against her back in Númenor, because Númenor gives me the feeling that that's the kind of culture where a baby born with a deformity, they leave it out to be exposed and die.
Very Spartan.
I can picture the Númenóreans looking down on any physical ailments, disabilities.
It seems plausible. I wouldn't. Although, by the way, the Harfoots probably do the same thing. They probably leave their. I mean,
take their wheels.
They would, culture.
They would. I never considered that, but I was like, oh.
See, everybody thinks hobbits or halflings are cute and adorable until you play D&D 2nd Edition Dark Sun, and they're cannibals. They're feral-wide, bestial cannibals that will kill you and eat you. Halflings in Dark Sun setting are wow.
Okay,
Glenn, you've got some trauma there, I think.
Yes. Yes. Okay. We fought a tribe of cannibal halflings in Dark Sun when in Denture, and it was not good.
That does sound bad. I agree. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's go and talk about our. Excuse me.
Did not expect to go there. Today is a pretty awesome stream. This is a good one. Anyway.
Okay. Let's talk about our most memorable scenes of the episode. Anybody want to start?
For me, I mean, like I said earlier, every scene with Prince Durin, but the most heartfelt scene was the one with him and Elrond when they were talking, that really good one. And he almost tells Elrond his secret name.
Yeah.
That was good. I like Malva having some character development at the end, admitting she was wrong and saying Nori was right. It's like, hey, she's been an annoying Saxville Baggins the whole season.
Right.
And then she actually, okay, cool. I really like that. But there's one moment that really made me want to cry. Yeah. And that was when Theo gave Arondir a hug.
Me too.
Oh my God.
I did cry.
And Arondir was like paused for a second, and then gave, then just wrapped him in a big bear hug, and I was just like, that was just
that was maybe my most emotional moment of the episode. Although Elrond and Durin, I don't know, it's hard to beat that. But yet, no, I totally lost it when Theo hugged Arondir.
What's one of them doing here? And now he's hugging him, and I'm just like, yeah, that was.
You got me. Another father-son bonding, and but essentially I think he's accepting him as a father figure at this point, and it got me in my feels.
Yeah, it did. There's not as nearly as extreme. It didn't cause the tearjerkers or anything, but it wasn't supposed to. But I did like the character development. Speaking of, piggyback on what Glenn said, Nori's mom, because at first Nori's mom was like, and then when Nori had that sad moment, I'm just a Harfoot, that's all I'll ever be. And at the end, her mom actually tried to boost her up and was like, I'm going to be here with you. I'm going to go with you instead of trying to fight with you. It was kind of the reverse of the Durin, Nori and her mom. You have the father and son over here who are getting more split. And then you have the mother and the daughter that are growing closer together. So it's like the Harfoots are like the inverse relation to what's going on with the Dwarven succession. So I kind of like seeing the dichotomy there.
I'm really excited to see what happens with the four of them: Sadok, Poppy, Nori, and I can't remember Nori's mother's. Marigold.
I like Poppy. I think she's probably my favorite.
I love Poppy.
I love Poppy.
Poppy had like 2 moments in this episode where I was like, she has Nori's back and I love her. So the first was when Sadok was wanting Nori to ask the stranger to go try to fix this, and she's like, Poppy knew why she didn't want to ask, and Poppy just sort of jumps right in with a reason and a support, and so that Nori wasn't on the spot. And then of course she immediately says she's going to go with Nori, and I love the way she has her back. And
their relationship, Poppy and Nori, reminds me of the more positive and healthy aspects of Frodo Samwise relationship.
I agree.
Getting rid of the whole class structure thing that was going on there, but the friendship and loyalty. Poppy reminds me of Sam.
Yeah, so I think they're a Frodo Sam type of relationship as well. I thought the exact same thing, but you're right. Without the, at least I don't think this is so much in the Peter Jackson movies. It's not really emphasized. In the books, it's emphasized the class differential between the two of them. And so that's not here. And I love them. There's I
already mentioned the one thing that I hated was everybody surviving the volcano, but
I agree with you there, Glenn.
That was just okay.
Well, here's my thing. I just saw this new thing on Pompeii came out on National Geographic, and it didn't help that I watched all they did entire reenactment or whatever that they did. I recently saw that, so I've been kidding it too, because Númenor reminds me of Atlantis, and then there's an explosion, kind of like what happened with Pompeii and the lost city there. I mean, there's a lot of historical parallels I think they were drawing from to make this happen. So it just kind of reminded me of that as well. I don't know why I'm going into that, but it didn't really help. So I was like, oh no, but of course, with everything in fantasy, you got to take it with a little grain of salt and just enjoy the ride.
It's just, speaking of ride, that's my analogy.
But I did go, this is how this would happen.
Surviving that pyroclastic flow the way they did is kind of like Indiana Jones riding out a nuclear blast in a refrigerator.
Yeah, I saw that.
So
that was the worst, though. I mean,
but see, it's on par. That really is on par on the need to suspend disbelief.
It may be, but nothing looks more ridiculous than flying through the air in a refrigerator. I'm sorry.
And then getting out being fine.
Yes,
Yeah.
that looks more ridiculous than anything. Whether
Yeah.
it truly is more ridiculous doesn't matter. It looks ridiculous. So
Yeah. What did the
Yeah, it
dwarf
did
wife?
look
But I mean, he
ridiculous.
must have.
And I mean, this show, it looked great when, the people surviving. I wish they'd had more soot, singed hair, and stuff like that, burnt clothes. But, like I said, it's Ring of Power's nuclear blast refrigerator. And, and yes, that video has played because I will have found a clip of that video of the thing flying through the air.
Got to do it. Jenn, do you have any other scenes that you want to add that we haven't talked about yet? I have a couple, but
I'll probably pass on this. I
Okay.
mean, there's a couple
You've
I
mentioned
really
some
like.
that-
Yes,
yeah. Yeah. So things that we haven't mentioned at all that I wanted to bring up. One scene that I loved, it's really a couple scenes, but Theo and Galadriel. I really enjoyed that. That was a relationship I never would have thought we would ever see them particularly interact on screen. And
I knew it 2 episodes ago. When she rode by and he asked Arnder, "Who's that?"
Oh.
The look on his
Okay.
face was teenage boy with a massive crush.
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Yeah, it kind of was.
So
yeah, I see. I remember that.
That right
now.
there told me they're gonna have scenes together.
Well, you're having a crush on someone who's like,
a couple thousand years
old
old.
for you.
Yeah,
Just
just a little.
Anyway.
He's a kid. Yeah,
I know.
Understand.
But it was, they were really sweet scenes, and
yeah,
I think Galadriel showed a lot of growth in this episode. Like I don't think it came on all of a sudden. I think there's reasons for it that have been building throughout the season. But one thing I sort of picked up on as I was watching it a second time, like I was sort of the first time sort of wondering, like, okay, well, why has she like seemed to really have a lot of growth? Why is the way she's talking, she's bringing a lot more wisdom. She's advising Theo in things that she probably would have needed advice on like an episode or two ago. Like, and I realized one of the reasons is this whole season, and for hundreds of years, she's been fighting this fight where she believes something with the core of her being that no one else believes. Everyone is fighting her on it. Everyone is doubting her on it. And finally, the thing that she knows has been happening this whole time is out in the open. And she isn't going to have to just fight for that even belief that it's real anymore. She still has to fight the same fight, but she's not going to have to then convince everyone around her that the fight is real at the same time. So I think that may be a big reason why things have shifted for her a little bit. I think there's other reasons too, but I just wanted to bring that up. And I think she was able to just offer Theo some things that she herself has needed to learn. And I liked that I was surprised that she would open up to him about things like Celeborn. But when you do that, when you offer that kind of side of yourself to someone, then you get that in return. And he gave it to her in return. And the same thing with Theo and Arondir. Arondir is offering him that, sort of fatherly support, and then he gets Theo's trust in return. And it made me actually feel like Theo, who I thought was a character headed in a very bad direction, then it might have been wrong about him, because when I've seen the way he responds to two people now who have offered him support, that he is able to put trust in them, I think there may be hope for him. So, yeah.
I hate to say it, I disagree on his future. I think it's going to look good for a long time. And if they do a time jump, like they age, enough to age Theo up, switch actors, make him an adult, I could totally see him eventually being one of those kings that gets a ring from Sauron. Just as much a chance of it with him as there is with Halbrand, I think.
There is still, of course, there's seasons all ahead of us here. It's just like when, and anything could happen. And, we see him at first, he's just like this little shit, like he's doing all this like stupid crap and you just want to slap him a little bit. But, he's a kid. He's a kid. And he is showing growth and progress, and the way he's responding to things is surprising me. And so I just not give up hope on Theo yet, is my point. Like, I think there's hope for the kid.
The more they build him up and do that for him, that makes it all that much more of a tragic fall.
Oh, yeah.
I kind of think I still think that's what's going to happen with Theo.
It's too early to say. In my opinion. But anyway, I like the scenes. I thought those were strong scenes for Galadriel, for Theo, and so I thought those are my ones that stood out to me really in a good way. And then the other one that stood out to me not in a good way is the appearance of the Balrog. I think they should not have shown it when they did. Yep, that dude. Yeah, I think they should have. When they showed the leaf burn, they should have cut it there. And we would know probably what that was, what that meant. But I don't feel like there was enough impact in showing the Balrog here.
I felt very heavy fan service with that.
Yeah, which I mean, that's fine. I don't
get it, but that was a little heavy.
I just think they could have used, I mean, the Balrog is there, of course, and we knew that would come. And I just I think maybe the first appearance of it could have been a little bit more impactful if they built it up a little bit more. And I think by cutting it with the leaf burning up, we would have known. But then we can get that full appearance of it in another moment later on.
I know they're compressing the timeline, but I still feel it's a little early for them to be, bringing the Balrog into play when they're just getting to a deposit of mithril. Because we know
it's a little bit early too. Yeah,
we know they mined a whole bunch of mithril because we've seen mithril in the Third Age.
Yeah.
Right. And we hear a lot about it. We hear about more than we actually see.
Right.
But we know that they mine.
Frodo Bilbo's little coat of mail, that's not the only piece of mithril in the world.
No.
Like there's got to be a lot of it out there. So yeah, I thought it was too early for the Balrog, and I just don't think this particular appearance of it was very impactful. So I think it might have been more like tense if we hadn't actually seen it. It's kind of like the whole like horror or I guess, I mean, maybe this isn't like popular now. Maybe this is going back to like Hitchcock and things like that, or Jaws. Like, don't show the monster, don't show the, the evil thing, but hint at it, and it's there, and you create more tension by doing that than just by like, blah, there it is on screen.
I think there would have been more impact if that shot had been cut to black. If that had been the end of the episode, I think that would have made more of an impact, especially depending on what you put for music after, over the credits. That plays a large part about it. But it would be, because that quite often, the last image, especially when it's a big reveal like this was, tends to stay in the mind of the audience longer than just, okay, it's the end of an episode. It's not
it
a
wasn't
big
even
reveal.
the end of the episode. Yeah, I don't know. I think
it was one of the fake endings.
On to that. Yeah,
they pulled the Return of the King and had a couple of fake endings in this episode.
We are all in 1000% agreement with that, I think.
Okay.
I think, yeah.
All right, good to know. All right, so I think then we can talk about our
Nobody
actors.
liked you.
Sorry. We can talk about our actors for the episode, and I think I know one that we are all going to say. So should I just say
Arthur?
it? Owain Arthur, yeah.
Yeah.
The guy was just
phenomenal.
On the next level of performance, and through all that makeup and beard. I mean, he's got to act with this big old thing sitting on his nose, and I think he's got forehead and eyebrow prosthetics, and acting through all that, and he just did such a superb job.
Yeah.
Killer.
Give the guy an Oscar.
Give him everything. Emmy. Give him an Emmy.
Yeah.
Give him everything. Give him an Oscar anyway. What the heck? But he's really good. Yeah. I just that character is just he's so layered and such a passionate character.
And so likable.
I love him. I just love him.
I would totally dig hanging out with Durin. Just
Yeah,
as
me
long
too.
as you didn't, just as long as you didn't expect me to do a rock breaking contest with them,
Yeah.
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 I would weary quickly.
He's
Yeah.
like the perfect mix of awareness of everything going on because he sees through Elrond shit. Like he's like, you let me win. Like he's a perfect area of awareness as well as good-hearted naivete about things that are going on around him. And he's like, no, why are you fighting against this? It's the right thing to do. But like, so he's a part of the good-hearted, not understanding, but also very aware at the same time. He's the perfect balance of that, and I enjoy that. And then
there's a hint. I don't want to say darkness, but I'll bring it. Be talking about it. The specific word I'm thinking of when we get to themes, but he's not all flowers and rainbows and cuddly teddy bears. There's a darker side to Durin. Just as there is to Disa, who is one of my other favorites, Sophia Nomvetti. I think it's Nomvetti. She was great.
My partner really likes her.
She's amazing too.
Yeah,
but
we like her a lot.
I had two words popping into my head during that one scene when they were sitting next to each other, and she's talking about these mountains will be ours. All I could think was Lady Macbeth, Lady Macbeth, Lady Macbeth. I was like,
there's she has ambition. Both of them, I think what we saw from both of them in this episode is how passionate they are as individuals, which has a wonderful side to it. And, it has the other flip side to it. So I think, we have to recognize that when a character is passionate, there can be some chaos or some, collateral for those kinds of things. So both of them have that, but I love them because they're both very charismatic characters.
They're both extremely charismatic.
I just so
and I love those contacts they have her wearing, those golden eyes. Those are awesome.
Right. And that can be tough, like sometimes to like act through things like that even, but she's also she's getting it. So amazing.
One other person I have to give props to, and that's Tyro Luhafidin. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. That's Theo. I thought he was really good. This was probably the best he's done on the show.
For sure.
Agreed.
For sure.
And I really enjoyed his work. So, I mean, we got the two dwarves and then Theo are my three picks for who would get a spotlight.
I think we have to put Elrond in there too, because he's really crucial to some of those scenes. I mean, I agree that if any one character in all those scenes was carrying it, it is Durin Jr. But I think Elrond is really key in there as well. Yeah, I know the fourth. I'm being silly.
I know.
And
there was just this episode had some really good acting all around.
Yeah,
Peter Mullen as the Dwarven King. He's pretty good.
He's doing great too, and that he both of the two Durins have had some great scenes together in this episode and in previous, and so I also am impressed with him. I think Morfydd Clark, again, Galadriel had a real growth that I saw for her in this episode. So she's been doing great, but this was a particularly good episode for her. Yeah.
That was a pretty good episode for everybody, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a lot of characters I think were sort of, downplayed in this particular epised. Like there were plenty that kind of took a back seat, which is fine. So
Isildur and Valendo or Vela, whatever his buddy's name,
Valendo,
they kind of took a back seat this episode,
right? And certainly Halbrand did.
Yeah. One thing I got about the casting,
Halbrand did.
I mean, he was only showed up in last couple of scenes.
He was more subdued as well.
Okay. Anything else we wanted to add for cast actors for this episode?
I thought he did a pretty good job.
He did good.
He looks good for TV. For a
You didn't
TV
age it,
budget,
Jay.
yeah, for a TV budget, that looks pretty good. I'm glad they kept the design from Jackson.
Yes.
I mean,
Jackson's-
why wouldn't
I-
you? Why would you
yeah.
redesign it? Just wouldn't
I
make
can't
sense.
quite tell if it's got wings of shadow or not. I didn't notice that. I'll have to
Can't
watch that
tell
shot
either.
again. But I passed on that argument with AP about whether or not it started, and then I diverted it. I'm like, no, we're not going down this road. That's
Some
a
things,
big long
yeah.
discussion online whether Balrogs have wings.
You know what? I don't want to know.
Yeah.
Actually, really, truly don't want to know if Balrogs have wings. I'd rather not get close up to one to find out. You know?
Yeah, no kidding.
So
We don't want to see the monster.
no, I don't. I
agree.
literally don't. Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about themes.
Okay.
I have one. I can start. I haven't started anything.
Okay.
So mine that I wanted to talk about was regret, and more specifically, a lot of characters in this episode are regretting helping others. And so you help someone, you have some negative consequences that
Didn't pick
result
up
from
on
that
that.
sometimes.
I didn't pick
And
up
a
on
lot-
that aspect of it, helping
Yeah.
others part. Good.
Yeah, a number of characters are feeling that way. So, and of course, there are the exceptions, the ones who have been helping others or trying to help others who are not regretting it. So they stand out a little bit. But I think, it's all part of that theme. So certainly, the most strong in that sentiment was Elendil, who was very much regretful that he ever helped Galadriel. And you might expect Muriel to feel similarly, since things did not go well for her, but she didn't. So she stood very much in contrast to Elendil and that sentiment that he had. So in that plot line, that's probably the strongest sense of that. And then we also have it big time from Nori, and then she kind of gets over it, but she spends a lot of the episodes seeming to have some regret for helping the stranger, and she says she should have left everything alone. She should have, and yeah. So Gandalf, yeah, probably Gandalf. But she still has that little bit, like she had that really nice moment where she did hand him an apple. She's still regretful at that point. Like right after that, she goes and tells her mom that she should have left things alone. And it isn't until after the encounter with the mystics that she decides that nope, she's sticking with it and she's going to continue to help him, and he deserves. And I think so. She's maybe the recognition there is she's encountered what seems to be some real evil in the world. And so, she is maybe getting that sense of there is peril about the stranger. He was right. He is perilous, but he's not evil. But then she encountered some real evil, and she's like,
at least the one is evil. The other two,
I mean, they all hang out together. I'm sorry, but you're all getting lumped together because none of them had any problem with just burning the heck out of these little people for no reason. So yeah, you're all evil. All right. And there are others. I mean, but I think those are the strongest points. And I'm going to, for time, let somebody else jump in with any other themes they wanted to discuss.
Yeah.
I'm going to say you're seeing a foundation for generational trauma here. That's the theme. You have it with the two Durins, obviously, but then, like I said, also importantly, the Harfoots kind of breaking off. You have that as well, starting anew. That's never kind of been done before. The way that they're going to make changes in their life as far as the life that they've always lived before. You don't get a lot of it, but you even have Galadriel saying, I have to go back and explain myself, because she was originally going to do that before, and she is actually going back. You have the episode ending where Galadriel is getting elvish medicine for Halbrand, and they're going back to see her people and the king. And you have that division as well. So there's a lot of division between what has been done, the way of things, I guess, with the dwarves, with the elves, with humans, right? Mordor is now a thing. And you have what's going on with the Númenóreans and the Southlanders, the new start, the new settlement there. So it's all setting up generational, depending on which section you're in, either trauma or healing.
They're
So
breaking with the past one way or the
breaking
other.
with the past one way or the other. So
Yeah.
much. That's the entire episode to me. It's applicable to the Harfoots, the dwarves, the humans, and the Númenóreans. All of them are going through that in this episode, and to me, has to be the largest theme of all
That's
because
a
it
good one.
applies equally to everyone.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
I picked up on a couple, and two of you sort of hit on some of it. For me, the big one that I noticed was, Rebecca said this word a few minutes ago, ambition. A lot of ambition going on. I mean, Durin and Giza, she wants them to rule not just Khazad-dûm, but all the mountains. And like I said, Lady Macbeth, maybe. So they've got a lot of political and economic ambition going on there. Theo has some ambition. He really wants to take on and kill all the orcs. He wants to take back the Southland. He's not going to be able to do it. We know that, but that's one hell of an ambition.
I don't think it's an ambition in his case. I think that is just, that's
Vengeance.
the trauma of vengeance. You killed my mother, or so he believes. I think I don't think it's ambition in his case, but yeah.
Speaking of the Southlands, and it actually hits several storylines, recovering from the resilience and hardiness, being able to recover from a disaster. We see the Harfoots. Just like Emmons Field, Two Rivers folk, disaster hits, we just pick ourselves up and fix everything, go back to normal, be prepared, So we're seeing the Harfoots do that. We're sort of getting an inclination that, the Southlanders, they're not going to rebuild there, but, they haven't given up. They're moving to somewhere hopefully safer. But, resilience was one. Family is another big theme. You get it with, Durin calling Elrond a brother. And you got the 4 Harfoots going off to help their new adopted giant, the stranger. They're going off to warn him that there's some crazy, evil, magical people after him.
He's one of them now.
Yeah, so it's it's that family, and there's like the steadfast loyalty, and we see the steadfast loyalty between Durin and Elrond. The other one that you guys have kind of hit on, I put it in a different way: guilt. A lot of people are feeling guilty in this episode. I mean, Galadriel thought it was all her fault. Theo thought it was all his fault. Elendil says it's his fault if he hadn't brought Galadriel onto his ship. Durin even literally says it's my fault. He
feels guilty for failing Elrond. Yeah.
So it's like everybody wants to take the weight of their current hardships and losses and put it on their own shoulders, even when it's not their responsibility. And then there's just this one's a little one: the awakening of new and old darkness. The new darkness being how the Shadowlands have turned into Mordor and covered with volcanic cloud, and the old darkness being awakened. Well, obviously, that how a leaf woke him up, but okay.
That leaf was noisy. All right,
yes.
It just made
and it smelled. It smelled.
That's it. Yeah.
That's what it was.
It smelled like elves. That's the real problem.
Yes. That probably made the Balrog hungry.
I enjoy you two so much. I'm getting so much from this. Go ahead.
But those are the ones that I found.
I think we got there's quite a lot here. I mean, like we've said a lot. There's a lot of themes. And they've been doing, I think, better and better with that in, throughout the season. Like themes are strong, which is I think a lot of why I really am enjoying the season, because like if you have a really strong themes are well developed, I'm with you. I'm liking it.
I'm really happy with this show. There's only one show on TV right now that I like more. Andor.
Oh, I still need.
I'm loving Star Wars Andor. And Perrin in Andor is a jackass. I just think that's funny. That
Perrin.
yes, spelled the same too.
We're stealing some crap.
Somebody who came up with that character named.
Right?
They had to have read the Wheel of Time.
Look at us. I'm giving a side eye to a little bit to Star Wars going. Perrin?
There's a Perrin.
Yeah.
Yes, Mon Mothma's husband is named Perrin. Perrin. And the show is called
side eye to Disney
Andor
right now. Side
Well,
eye.
it's not Disney.
Totally.
It's somebody that worked on Rogue One, and this show definitely read Wheel of Time.
Well, good.
Okay.
That's why Rogue One was the best one of those.
Oh, we
It's
can
good-
have an
it's a good
argument
movie.
about that one day. I
Okay.
don't like it.
You don't like Rogue
I
One?
liked it.
It's
All right.
fine.
How do I hide
It's
you?
fine. It's
I liked it. He's-
I'm trying to unmute her.
What did you do, Glenn?
I'm trying to unmute her. Just a second.
just muted me again.
There we
I-
go. There we go. I had a hard time. I would click it and it would do nothing, so I would click it again, and then it would unmute and then mute you
Then
real
you
quick.
started
I'm like,
freaking out.
click,
Anyway,
click,
all right,
click.
guys, we got 2 minutes, so I'm not going to get too far into the Star Wars slander. I'll just
Right.
say it's not bad. It's fine. It's
Yeah.
overrated. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
Okay, I'll forgive you for that.
Okay. No, I can hear
No,
that.
I next week, guys, you're going to see someone else entirely in this spot. I'm gone from the show because I said I didn't love Rogue One. Sorry.
Yep, we're
It
kicking
was
her
been
off.
nice. It's been
We've
fun.
retired her,
I'm just
and we're
gonna
canceling her
say-
channel.
You can't cancel me. You can kick me off, but anyway, we should say goodnight, everyone.
Yes. Good night, everyone. Well, thank you, ladies, for joining me and watching the show and discussing it with me. It's been a fun evening. Thank you, audience, for watching. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please leave us a like, some comments, hit subscribe, and even hit that bell so you get notifications when our videos come out. Most of our videos will be Tuesdays at 4:30 in the afternoon. Thanks for watching. Have a great night, and don't forget to be awesome.